Welcome to the Retail Tech Podcast. My name is Darius Vasafi, and today I am speaking with Devdas Pattathil, a CEO of OnePint, which is in the AI-powered inventory management space. Hi, Das.
Hello, Darius. My background is 25 plus years in the supply chain fulfillment space. Um, I was a co-founder of a company called Nextuple, which we started in 2018, um, of which we have branched off a new offering called OnePint, and which is what we're going to talk about today. Um, Prior to Nextuple, I was heading product engineering, data science functions for supply chain tech for Walmart e-commerce as well as Walmart grocery for a while. Prior to that, I spent about 15 years doing multiple roles, professional services, consulting, as well as product management for enterprise order management companies.
Let's get really basic now and start from what is considered supply chain.
Well, I think supply chain at a very basic level is about movement of your goods from where it is manufactured all the way to the consumer, and even the reverse logistics part kind of comes into the supply chain space. So, but it all plans starts with your planning. Someone wants to sell something, you want to plan for how much you're going to sell, what sales do you want to have, and that really leads to who do I buy from? Where do I buy from? When do I get it shipped? What method of shipment, whether it's ocean, air, whatever, right? How much lead time do I have? Where do I stock it? And how do I prevent, overstocking? But also I want to make sure I don't understock. All of that are, key challenges or questions that, a supply chain professional needs to answer day in and day out. Really that's it. I mean, I think, it depends, if you're looking at food and beverage, it's a different sort of supply chain. If you're looking at apparel and fashion, it's a different supply chain, different lead times, different flavors, but all boils down to moving of goods from, point A to point B. In my own professional career, I've seen, supply chain evolve as a function in companies from looked at as a operational aspect, a cost center, to actually being part of the CEO's priorities in terms of supply chain. Having a good supply chain leads to customer experience. So they're very interconnected, and I think that realization is has come about in a couple of decades ago, and companies are still trying to integrate supply chain into how your customer experience is being met or is being promised. Amazon is a great example of putting that function, making sure that your supply chain is designed to hit your customers within a day or two, and similarly many companies have kind of followed suit.
Inventory management and orchestration is a key part of that whole supply chain picture.
Inventory is a big part. That's not the only part, of course. I mean, but it's a major part of planning for your inventory is a big part, because I think in the end, how much you carry is in your books in terms of how much inventory are you carrying. And in many cases, you plan for certain inventory, and if you don't sell it as you expect, now you're carrying dead inventory, and you need to move that out of your system. So it's costly to get that wrong. Either if you understock, of course you're disappointing customers, you're losing confidence by your folks who are following your brand. But also if you overstock, now you're in a situation where you need to find a way to move that out, by putting put it in as markdown, etc., etc. But so it is important to get that really right for supply chain management.
For inventory planning, let's see if we can go over an example of someone in that role. What is their day-to-day and overall role involved?
Let's just take an example of apparel retailer or a brand. I think they have to think about historically what are they selling, right? That's obviously going to be the primary data set that you work with, is that what did I sell last year, what did I sell the year before, and what sort of seasonality factors applied to my sales. But also, you have to start thinking about the trend. It's seasonality, historical data is one thing, but what am I seeing in the last few weeks? So marrying these two things and figuring out what are the items that are likely to sell is one primary aspect of demand forecasting. Now, demand forecasting has gone up a few notches in the recent past, where it's also about demand sensing. You have to go through your social media and influencers and all of that to figure out what is actually being talked about, and that can now influence your demand forecast as well. So it's getting a lot more real time in nature, rather than a monthly or a quarterly planning process. But once you get the demand forecast right now, I think you've got many companies work with what we call an open to buy, meaning you have a certain budget that is yet you have in mind, saying that this is what I think I can spend for, let's say, Q2, Q3, whatever. And now the question is about, okay, you've got a bunch of items that you already sell, you have a few items that you want to introduce into the market, and what is going to give me the right level of sales and right level of profitability. Now this is where I think the data science piece comes in, is that how do you marry what is likely to sell with what your targets are, and optimize for the right assortment and how much to buy for each. And once you know that, now that's just at a macro level decision. Now you have to think about, where do I keep it? Because you may have a bunch of stores, you may have a bunch of warehouses, and you want to now start looking at, where are my customers, right? So obviously, if you look at the United States, there are certain pockets where there is going to be your high demand centers, and so how do I keep it close to them so that I don't spend too much on shipping, or I don't have to promise like a long lead time. So that decision is also important, as to where do I place it once I buy it. Now, these are all decisions that you make, but also equally important for a supply chain manager or a professional to tweak these things as they see things changing, because nothing follows exactly a plan. And when things deviate, I think that is really where the power of a tool comes in, where can you sense it early, can you make decisions, can divert your stock from point A to point B. All of those decisions are become key.
The big force that is changing everything that we're doing right now is, of course, AI and agentic AI. What's the strategy and the thought process into what you're building?
As part of Nextuple, we were working on many different solutions in the supply chain space, including inventory, order management, fulfillment, all of that. But when we looked at the developments in Gen AI and agentic AI, and we saw that pattern evolving, as well as we saw an opportunity in the inventory management space, we decided to launch OnePint.ai with a real focus on, how do we create AI-driven solutions that can create the next generation of inventory planning and management products. So that was really the focus. Now, we once you had that vision, we had to really put that into action in terms of what is agentic AI, what is Gen AI, what's its applicability to inventory planning, what's its applicability to replenishment planning, all of that. We are in that path right now, Darius, that we are looking at problems. We're finding the gap that exists in the market, and we're trying to solve those things, piece by piece, as part of OnePint.ai. And happy to elaborate, based on more questions that you have, and we can go into the details of that.
Sure. Can we talk about one of your example customers and deployments?
Yes, of course. I think there's a good example that I really wanted to highlight here, which is, for many years I have dabbled with this concept called outcome-based fulfillment optimization. What that really means is that, generally, if you look at fulfillment of orders from your stores, your warehouses, all of that, there are some general rules that you apply to those fulfillment decisions. I want to ship from the closest location. I want to minimize my splits. I don't want to overload my warehouses. I don't want to overload my stores, etc., etc. But traditionally these have been very static rules that you set in the system, and even if ML is applied to these things, there is still a little bit of static nature in the way these decisions are made. Now, the concept that we thought about was what is called outcome based sourcing, which is you don't worry about individual order level decisions. Rather, think about what is your network designed for. So your network is designed for getting to customers in 2 to 2.5 days, right? Every shipment on an average should get in 2.5 days. Your warehouses should be no more than 90% utilized, right? You don't want to pay for overtime. Stores should be similarly constrained. Your split should be less than 10% or 20%, meaning every order that you take, I don't want to only for 20% of the orders I want to make two shipments. Everything else should go in a single shipment. Various those constraints, if you put those guidelines in place, now how does AI then take those guidelines and execute, right? Not looking at micro level decisions. At a macro level, is my fulfillment trending in the right direction to optimize for my network? If it is not, I adjust the rules, and so that I make decisions which will take me to that outcome. This is, I think, really where agentic AI really comes in handy, is that rather than a human being sitting and deciding or changing rules, it is able to reason, understand the patterns, look at the macro picture, and adjust the weightages of different decisions, and with the goal of taking your network into a certain outcome. And this is, I just talked about an example of outbound shipping. It equally applies with planning and inventory management, because the same thing applies where you have um, guidelines around your sales targets, your profitability targets, customer satisfaction targets, all of these things. And none of these are like black and white. There are some gray areas there. And this is where I think, our Gen AI can reason, create decision, and agent can execute on that.
Concept of trend sensing is very
Yeah.
interesting.
Good question. Many different ways. But one example could be that, say, there is item that is on sale, right? You mark down the price of a certain item by 20%, and you're seeing a demand spike because of that. Now, Gen AI now can say that, okay, I've got an overstock situation for an item, like likely going to be excess, and you've seen a trend for another item which is similar in characteristic, right? The reduce price by 20%, I can sell through faster. It can apply the same logic without a human being in the loop, can apply the same logic and suggest that a markdown for this item at these stores would likely result in higher velocity of sales for that item. So that's one example. There are many, many examples, but I'm just taking a simple one.
When you look at an agentic solution, where in the stack would it sit?
Basically, data is king. Now, the good thing though is that the way Gen AI works, you don't have to have structured data. That's the big breakthrough that we have seen, is that earlier the data has to have a certain format, has to be in certain table. If it is not, you have to do something to, massage it in the format that you need. I think the big breakthrough for us is to allow data to be where it is. I mean, if it's all in a data lake, great. You can pull it into a data lake, great. But if it's not, as long as I have APIs that can access the data where I need to access it from, and these APIs have clearly defined signatures, Gen AI is able to, be trained to pull that data from whichever source. It could be from your ERP, if there is an API. It could be from a flat file. It could be from a log. Any of that information, it can pull that information. So that's the first step, is to first identify your data sources, train your AI to be able to access the data in the right form. So that's step one. The second thing is, so you asked a question about where does agentic AI sit? Now, agentic AI is nothing but, an agent which will have access to this data, and, maybe some predictions or some insights from that, and then makes a decision based on um, those insights. So the insight here, the example that we just talked about, is that I have potential overstock. I have, sales trend that I see for an item that is on markdown. Now, how do I marry these two things and, and then make a decision that I need to update the price for item A at location B? That's the decision that agent would make. Now, again, agent has to know what are the guidelines, parameters that he can operate with. So constraints are important. You need to, be the agent know that you can't mark down an item by more than 20% or 30%. And you can't do this or you can do that. So within those parameters, you're able to make those decisions. And and if there is a human in the loop requirement, such that like, I need to bring this up for someone's approval, that's great. That can be implemented too. So I think that's really the concept of agentic AI in this example.
So of course, the data has to be in the right format so that the agent can actually ingest it. And that's where I guess, the MCP or Model Context Protocol standard is addressing, correct?
Yeah, and by the right format, what we are able to do now is that the source could have various different formats, but I'm able to consume all that and create a format which the agent can understand. That's really the breakthrough that we are having, is that we don't have to teach it to read each thing in a different way.
What kind of training will these agents need to be able to work correctly for a specific retailer or brand's operations?
Well, I think we are still learning, right? We are still learning, how much an agent is able to do things, and how much training it needs, and how much what are the decisions for which you need to have some oversight. All of these are still evolving, Darius, so to speak, and we are doing some of the proof of concepts right now, and we are learning too. But in a general sense, um, I believe, right, from what I have seen, that you will be surprised by how much an agent can do, right? How much it can actually learn from the data it has seen and the patterns it has observed, and how well it is able to, reason like a human being and make a decision. It is sometimes even, surprising to us to see that the agent can actually do that. And we don't expect it to see it. So I think I have clearly underestimated how much, the power of Gen AI and agentic AI. And I would say, it can do a lot more than what we currently think is possible.
So that training process, it's still something that's in development. What are your projections, goals for when you'll be able to get to a point where it is actually in production for you and it's launched?
Yeah, I think various aspects of our agentic AI approach is in production, and like anything new, we are being cautious, and we are being step by step approach that we are taking in terms of getting it launched. And we don't, and also it's a mindset thing too, Darius, is that we as technology providers have a lot of awareness and confidence in what we're doing, but also equally we have to be aware of our customers. And especially with OnePint.ai, we are looking at brands and smaller retailers who are dealing with inventory challenges, and the mindset also needs to be there to be able to consume some of these things. Take your foot off the pedal and let the machine do some of the activities. So it's about maybe taking baby steps, turning things on which are very mundane routine tasks can get be replaced by agentic AI, and then you go further into it. So I think we've done quite a bit of work, and there's more to come as we get our product deployed with more customers.
What kind of backend, I guess, model are you using? Is it something that you develop yourself, or are you using like a third party, or you're giving the customers the option to pick what model they want?
I think that is a possibility that the modeling, but we have gone with OpenAI. We that is our uh, framework of choice for Gen AI. However, I think the way that we have done it is that we could actually replace that with something else. It's very modular, very composable. So we are not hard tied to anything that we picked.
When we look at real world applications and what's going on right now, how would an agentic, I guess an agent handling inventory planning deal with uncertainty of tariffs?
This is my thought here is that ultimately what are tariffs doing to you? Tariffs are impacting your landed cost. Like how much is it going to actually get if you are procuring either parts or finished goods from overseas or manufacturing it there, what does it take for you to get it into a location from which you can fulfill, or if the store could be a fulfillment center, the total landed cost is getting impacted. Now, if you are a large company and if you have multiple supplier sources, now there is a landed cost decision to make in terms of where do I procure it from, right? If it is going to impact my landed cost in for my profitability, my sales, do I have a supply selection logic that I can use agentic AI to determine? And this could be very dynamic too. And given the way things are going, tariffs could be on, off. We don't know what's going to happen. So dynamically, how can we make decisions like that? Is where agentic AI can come in handy. Now, many people do it through Excel spreadsheets, other etc. But if these are moving so quickly, I think agents can have a role to play here, especially if you're a say a retailer who's got international presence. So what comes into the US may be different from what goes into another country. So those decisions can also be agent driven. Ordering ahead, stockpiling, which is to me, it's a short term strategy, but in the long term, the companies will have to figure out, am I going to increase price? I'm going to change my assortment, where am I going to sell, where I'm going to source from? All those strategic decisions have to be made in the long term. Temporarily you can maybe, buy some excess stock, load up. But that's that's looking ahead maybe 6 months.
How will this agentic system change the team structures in companies?
Very good question. Again, I think we are learning a lot in this process. We believe, for the companies that we're looking at, that is like, let's say a brand who's $100 million, in terms of their size. The inventory planning function is not a big function. You know, you have one, maybe two planners. You're dealing with maybe 1,000, 2,000 SKUs, and you're constantly firefighting with data that is coming in from from sales for pricing, whatever, and you're trying to figure out, okay, I've got this supplier who's going to take more time to ship something. I've got this sale, etc., etc. We believe agentic AI would actually free up, agentic AI or AI-driven planning tools will free up a lot of the time for these folks to focus more on strategy, right? Rather than firefighting, figuring out what happens today and what happens this week, you can start looking ahead and say, okay, I am seeing this trend. What's going to be, let me figure out, let me simulate what happens next quarter, the rest of the year. I think that's the shift that we would see. It's not necessarily going to replace planning function, but it's going to take out a lot of the redundant, repetitive functions from planning and allow planners to focus a bit more on the strategic side. So that's a shift we are seeing, and we anticipate to see more of going forward.
Are you seeing of course, as a startup, I'm sure you're always looking, and especially as a CEO, one of your main jobs is to raise money for the company so
Yeah.
you can grow it. What's that environment? What's the funding environment for your company and this space, like supply chain?
The good news is that anything AI driven is still has a lot of appeal in the funding market. So, we are not yet ready for going out there and raising capital, but that's something that, we would want to do in the near future. But what we've heard, at least in conversations with the folks who are closer to the investment side of things, is that there is still funding available, and if you can actually showcase traction with AI driven products, there is funding available to you. So that's something OnePint AI has to decide to do in the near future. Currently, if we are fully funded by the parent company, but we may look at that option very soon.
What are some challenges for yourself as you build and grow OnePint?
I'll answer the question in two ways. One is, if we were starting from scratch, right, as a new company, and we have done that as Nextuple, a handful of us got together, started from scratch and built a company. As a head of product, a head of engineering for Nextuple, I the biggest challenge for me was to hire talent when you are starting from scratch, right? So you have to sell a vision, but you want quality people to come and join you to to scale the company. And especially in the initial stages, you need rock stars, and to convince folks to come and join you with a vision. To some extent, getting your initial customers, right? So you're selling as a founder, you're selling yourself and your background, your credibility, all of that comes in way of actually selling something to your initial set of customers. But as OnePint is slightly different because we're not starting from scratch. We took a small team that was existing, and then we are building on top of that. So product was part of the product was already existing, part of the team was already existing. So the challenges are slightly different for us now. It's for us is the biggest challenge is going to be product market fit for the segment that we are targeting. And then after that, I would say, getting investment. And then we think about scale.
How will you measure product market fit for OnePint?
The repeatability of the same function, if I'm able to get the same product repeated for multiple customers with little or no um, code changes, right? To me, that's product market fit. So for our challenge would be to find that sweet spot for us to be able to deploy once, repeat multiple times with customers. So if I take a forecasting function, if I do that for an apparel company or a food and beverage company, can I repeat the model multiple times over, let's say 4, 5, 6 customers? That would be a good initial sign that you have product market fit. Of course, 4, 5, 6 is not a big number. You have to be able to scale a lot more than that.
It's probably going to be different for different product categories, right? Are you actually focusing on a specific product category?
It's a good question. I think we are focusing on a few categories. We are not focusing on everything. We are focusing on, we definitely are focusing on replenishable item categories such as food and beverage category, right? That's something that we're trying to do. We're also focusing on something which is maybe not fashion, but it's like high end apparel or a jewelry segment. We are focusing on that. Um, we are also really considering regional grocery as a target market for us to, and because we do see a space, a wide space out there in terms of that segment not having the right tool set. So these are the target spaces that we're focusing on. We are not focusing on, for example, say a manufacturer, or we're not focusing on something like a department store at this point. So we're picking and choosing where we want to really develop capabilities, and then as we get more customers, more product market fit, we may expand our boundaries. But right now, this is what it is.
For a customer, how would they measure success when they deploy OnePint?
The thing that we are very confident about is that we can actually show you value, in a very quick time. Give us 3, 4 weeks, give us the data. We can actually show you how we can do things a lot better than how you are traditionally doing planning functions. The value comes from a few things. One is you shave off the planning hours that a planner is spending on repetitive tasks. you show that your inventory stockouts are reduced. So can I reduce your stockout by 70%, 80%? That's a win because that's more sales for you. And you are managing overstock situations. You're not dealing with markdowns. So that's another win for you. So and overall, I mean, if you hitting your sales targets, profitability targets, all that is a function of good planning. So those are the key KPIs that we want to measure and we want our customers to measure, and that's where the ROI comes from. Analytics is definitely a part of what we're building, but not in the traditional sense of analytics. And it's not about we will have a bunch of analytics dashboard to provide to the user, which we will have. But we are looking at insights that AI can derive and use in decision making. In that sense, yes, the we are changing it from sort of a decision support to decision making through agentic AI. So, and also another thing that we're doing, to talk about, since you asked about analytics, is that we want to be able to offer a conversational interface for our users to be able to interact with the application, ask questions like, what does last month's sales tell me about, the current patterns? And we want the planners to be able to see that in pure text, right? Rather than, a bunch of spreadsheets. We have to consume all that information. Gen AI should be able to summarize that information and give it to the planner in a very easy to understand, readable format. That's really what we're focusing on.
So you'll probably have multiple agents, right? It's not going to be just one agent, and your agents are going to do different things.
Yeah, so we have a forecasting agent. We have a replenishment planning agent. We also have a inventory placement agent, which allows you to figure out if there is some rebalancing required between your network. Do I need to transfer some from West Coast to East Coast, etc. Now, these are some of the agents that we deal with. Now, I can imagine a future where there's a pricing agent, right, which we talk to and say, okay, hey, inventory picture for this, I detect overstock here, and hand it off to the pricing agent to figure out what should be the pricing. We don't do pricing, but we could easily interact with the pricing agent to set the right pricing for an item at the right store or a location. So this world is going to evolve into agents interacting with other agents, across the board.
That's where probably MCP is going to be a key part of that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
Are
For
you offering like MCP servers to customers?
at this point, we are not. We may actually have to do that as the use of Gen AI and agentic AI becomes more prevalent. That may be something that we'll have to do in a couple of years. I think you would see lot of AI-driven planning functions, automation, even risk mitigation functions. It's almost like if you think about autonomous supply chain, where there is hardly anything you need to do to change things. There may be occasional approvals that you need, but a well coordinated supply chain function where inventory planning, transportation planning, um, other warehouse store logistics, capacity planning, all these are working in tandem together, and one is able to sense what is changing on the other side and make adjustments. I can very well see that future in happening in the next 1 or 2 years. 5 years, I don't know where we are going, but I hope it's exciting.
What are some of the things that you're looking for right now for somebody who's watching this or listening to this podcast? What are you looking for? Customers, employees, anything specific at this point?
I would love to hear more from someone who's in the inventory planning function, in terms of, hey, we do these things and these are our, day-to-day challenges, because we're looking to learn, Darius, because there is never, enough that you can learn from, about this whole function. It's an age-old function. And we are looking every time we have a conversation, we learn something new. So I'm looking at this point, we're looking to understand a lot more about inventory planning and inventory management functions day to day, and what challenges folks deal with. That would be my biggest ask at this point of time.
Do you have a design partnership program?
We have not put that out on the website, but we do. we do. We are looking for companies who can actually be with us, partner with us, for us to, create a roadmap together. And I'm looking for the, say, 5 to 10 customers who can actually be the core of our initial, customer set.
It's been a pleasure catching up with you again.
Thank you. It was, great questions, and it was really, a pleasure to, chat with you, Darius.